Okay, so today what we have with us is probably two of the most niche motorcycles in the market. But Gavin, I think we had the most fun on these two bikes that we've had in a long time. Definitely the most fun comparison that I've been a part of in a long time. Enduro bikes, new for India. Less than a year ago, we had none. Today we have two. Somewhat reasonably priced, accessible motorcycles that have number plates on them that you can do everything with. Now, what we try to do, we've had these bikes for a week. What we've tried to do is just use them as customers would. Hey! I almost ran into you.
I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I was just changing and suddenly got stuck in another.
You okay? Are you okay?
Yep.
Not trapped, no?
Nope.
So, we've done some commuting on them, we've done a bit of highway riding on them, and then we went out and had lots of fun on the trail.
Yeah.
So, Gavin knew some good trails out Lonavala side. We had about a 1.5 hour ride on the highway to get there, and then maybe 2-3 hours
Off-road, yeah.
off-road, places where the car wouldn't really go to. We had double track, we had single track.
The edge of a cliff.
Yeah, it was great fun. So, let's start off-road. I think that's the most relevant thing.
Yeah.
Did they meet your expectations? What was it?
The KLX definitely did. The Enduro R not so much. To me, the KLX feels very light, very easy around tight trails. You have the turning radius, you have the lightweight to easily bend it around. If you drop it, it's quite easy to recover. So it makes the entire ordeal quite easy in comparison to the Enduro R, whereas this is a lot more demanding, to be a lot more careful with the inputs that you have, the throttle. To me, the suspension also doesn't feel as forgiving, so to say, when you're off-road.
Right.
It feels like it runs out of travel, and the damping could have been better, like you said earlier. So all in all, to me, as a beginner, if I was a beginner or an experienced person, I feel like I can extract a lot more out of the KLX than I can with the Enduro.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And let's put a few simple facts on paper. 139 kilos, 177 kilos. It's nearly 40 kgs difference, and you feel it in every way, in the way the bikes work off-road, in the way the suspension works, in the way the engine works with the motorcycle. This is just 18 horsepower, but it shines way beyond what you would expect an 18 horsepower bike to do. It reminds me of the R15 and how it outperforms what it should feel on paper. It's peppy, it's punchy, the engine feels like it's been built for off-road riding. Right off the bottom end, and mid-range is really strong.
Yeah.
So, you're in a slightly higher gear, it's shorter gearing. All of that works on the KLX, and I find that the KLX engine was nicer to use off-road. KTM is a road engine.
Yeah.
It's 390 based, 390 tune, doesn't like low revs, can stall off the clutch if you're on an incline and you haven't given enough.
Yeah.
Whereas this is much more trustworthy off the clutch. And then once you get a few revs up, it spikes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power suddenly coming in, and then it overwhelms the rear wheel, and then you're on this fight, which is entertaining but tiring.
Yeah.
And the suspension on the KTM is tiring. We've talked about this a few times. It's nice suspension. I think this is the best compared to the 390s Adventures. This is a little more controlled, but when you ride it next to the KTM, next to the KLX, the KTM is a fight. It's bouncing over surfaces, it's skipping over surfaces, more work to do. You can adjust it. Now, when you've got a bike that's bouncing over rocky trails, the tendency is to try and open up the compression, let the suspension breathe with the surface, give you a little more feedback, but then you jump it bottoms out.
Yeah.
So then you want to tighten it up again. Whereas the KLX is non-adjustable, simple. The rear just sags when you sit on the bike, and that's worrying. Like, oh God, I think I've lost half my travel. We'll show you a shot of that. I don't want to do it here. But it just sits down. But somehow this works so nicely off-road. So the tables turn when you go on the road.
Yeah.
The moment we go off-road, I want to be on this for almost every reason except the standing up ergonomics, which I think are a little too low for me and awkward. I preferred sitting on this bike while riding off-road. I preferred standing on that. Standing on that gave me more comfort and confidence to deal with what was happening underneath. So what do you think?
So I prefer the KLX. It's, to me at least, I agree with everything you said about the standing and the seating ergonomics. I like that on the KLX you can sit all the way up front.
It's a
load up
long
the front
seat.
suspension over here. And it almost makes you glide off-road because you're sitting in that sweet spot over here.
Yeah.
It's easy to get your leg out, also load up the front and take sharper turns and have the rear rotate when you're taking really sharp hairpin turns. With this one, you have to stand because when you're sitting, it just keeps knocking you off the seat, right?
Yeah.
And It's not that I think the standing ergonomics are particularly nice on this. It's just that you don't really
Agreed.
have much of a choice apart from standing up.
If I owned either of these bikes, I would go for a higher handlebar.
Yeah.
This one significantly. The KLX would need a significantly higher handlebar for me. The KTM slightly.
But do you think it's because of your height? I think a shorter rider would be-
Absolutely, but generally you would assume that taller people gravitate towards these motorcycles. 880 mm seat height on the Kawasaki, 860 mm on the KTM. There will be the full travel suspension KTM launching soon, which will be 880 or 90 mm on a seat height. So we will show you some footage of Harshad, our camera person, who's going to try these seats out. He doesn't want to do it here. He wants to do it on a flat surface. So we'll just overlay that footage. But these are for taller riders.
But I do think a shorter rider that's heavier can still find this accommodating.
A shorter rider with skill will do it. It's just easier for
because
guys
once
like
you
us.
load up that suspension, it really drops the
It
seat
does.
height by a significant
It
amount.
does.
So I
It
think
does.
a heavy, short person can still get his feet down.
We'll find out.
Yeah, you'll find out.
But I don't mean to say that if you're short, don't buy the bike. I just say that taller people will have it easier. You're in a tricky situation, you stick your foot out and you've got the bike. And again, lighter bike, easier to manage.
yeah.
The KLX is just easier.
To quickly give those seat heights some perspective, Harshad, who is 5'7", definitely preferred the KLX, although it has the taller seat height on paper. And that's because the suspension sinks a lot more. In fact, if you ever plan to carry a pillion on the Kawasaki, the suspension sinks to an almost hilarious extent. Just for reference, this effect is far less pronounced on the KTM. But despite this soft suspension, the KLX just works really well off-road, and significant credit for that must go to its low curb weight.
We had one spill on the KTM.
I had once.
Oh, it's okay. We had a one spill. It got pretty much no damage, right?
Yeah, no damage at all. This guard worked really well, this guard. And this plastic handguard also worked surprisingly well. I do believe that it's possible for you to bend the brake lever because of where it's positioned. Maybe you'll have to adjust the guard a bit.
Right.
But even then, it's actually it did quite well.
But if I own that KTM, I would take that guard off. I know it is functional.
Oh yeah, that's...
But two things to benefit there. You will save about 2 kilos if you knock that off, and any weight saved on that bike is a good thing.
Yeah.
The bodywork is that tough dirt bike sort of bodywork, which is why it stains so much. Both these bikes, you can see they've hardly done 2,000 kilometers and they look used. That's just the way with dirt bikes. It's okay. That's how the bodywork is. But with the KTM, my knees keep hitting that when I move forward, and I don't like it. So I would take that bar off.
But is that on the road or just off-road?
Off-road.
Okay.
Off-road.
But given that you prefer standing up on this, do you think that'd be as bothersome to you?
I would take it off.
Okay, just
Yeah.
on the safer side.
It just, and not even safer side, I'd probably damage the bike a little more if I dropped it, but
Okay.
it should work that way. You don't see anyone's dirt bikes with big bars on them, right? These are
I
not
generally,
adventure bikes.
I agree with you. I generally don't like big bars, but if I'm going to explore out there, I would like to have it because I wouldn't want to step out off-road and prematurely fall and
Fair
damage the bike and then have to cut off my trail light a bit too soon.
So you have two opinions there.
Yeah.
Okay. Engine performance. The
On-road,
KTM is
off-road?
absolutely faster in every situation,
Yeah.
but the KLX always keeps up.
Yeah.
The KLX can hold about 100 on the highway before it starts to get uncomfortable with vibrations and things like that. You can take it up a little higher, 115, 120, but then you're really working the engine.
Yeah.
KTM is much more relaxed at highway speeds. You can ride that on the highway just as fast as a 390 Duke or a 390 Adventure. It's just that the front end feels a little more light. It's not unstable, but there's this light feeling in the front end. And I really quite enjoyed riding the KTM in the city, on the highway. It's a bike I would happily live with as my one bike in my garage. The seat is just wide enough to be comfortable. The riding position feels more street oriented than this. Off-road, you would think that the KTM leaves the KLX behind, but no, the speeds are never that high. Even when we went on this large, open, dry lake bed, 110 maybe you go up to before things
I think I
start
managed
getting
to
really
reach
hairy.
about 120-ish.
Yeah,
on
and the
this.
KLX is right there till about that point, and maybe then you'd leave it behind. So don't think that this performance is a weakness. For casual off-road riding, which is what both these bikes are about, they're not competition machines, they're just fun, friendly things. The KLX is quick enough.
Yeah.
Fuel efficiency. This is a smaller fuel tank. 7-something liters, that's about 9 liters.
Yeah.
But when you ride this bike hard, it's consuming more fuel because it's a smaller engine. So when we went out for our long ride with highway, with city commuting, with off-road and lots of hard riding in first and second gear, The KLX was only 2 or 3 kpl more efficient, if I remember my calculations.
But
and that actual tank range...
About 3 or 4 actually.
Yeah, and the actual tank range is more or less the same.
Yeah, more or less the same.
And sure enough, when you look at our tested fuel efficiency numbers, which are extracted with careful and gentle riding, the KLX is far more fuel efficient. But when you whack the throttle open, the difference between these two motorcycles becomes much smaller, and we regularly found that the Kawasaki needed to be refilled sooner than the KTM.
From a commuting aspect, I would absolutely want to be on the KTM. There's 2 things about this bike that really unnerve me. One of them is I don't like the seat. It feels uncomfortable for 10 minutes. And the second is the amount of dive on the brakes.
Yeah.
It's almost comical.
Yeah. Scary.
You told me this when you tested the bike, right, for braking?
Yeah, I even addressed it in my article that it almost feels like you're about to fall over the handlebar the first time you do it.
Yeah.
I remember during the braking test, we do these really hard braking tests. So around that time, I genuinely felt like I was either going to pop a stoppie or fall off the bars. And that was a very scary feeling. I had to slowly progress into it and get used to that dive and then just slam on it. And that can be a bit of a scary affair. And I think it takes a few times to get used to, especially off-road when you're already standing over the bike, you're already leaned forward and then you hit that brake and you're diving forward. So can be a bit scary, but I like it. It
was more of a compromise on the KLX for me on-road. Off-road, not so much because you never brake that hard off-road in the dirt. But on-road, you need to get on the brakes and you need to be prepared if you slide all the way forward. You have dual-channel ABS on both motorcycles. With the KLX, you have one button to turn off the ABS at both ends. You can't keep only the rear off. Whereas the KTM gives you the choice of either front or nothing. It's not just the excessive suspension dive that makes you realize that this bike is not really made for the road. Even the general road handling, it feels like it's not in its happy place. It feels light and slightly awkward sometimes. Whereas the KTM is just this peaceful corner carver. You don't ride too aggressively, but it handles naturally and normally as you would
feel like you can get your knee out, you can lean it in through a corner. This one, I feel like I have to counter it a bit more.
You want to sort of keep your body up there and just get it through the turn, right? Whereas on the KTM, you can enjoy the turn.
Yeah. You can do both actually on the KTM.
Yeah.
So overall, I think the road handling this is a lot better, has that duality to it, and it just feels more comfortable, right?
Yeah. Tires,
yeah. Definitely prefer the ones on the Enduro R. Despite having the higher power, it seems to do a better job controlling it. Whereas the KLX ones, I think I'd replace them the first thing once I'm done wearing them out.
Yeah, they're okay. On muddy surfaces like this, they're fine. But the Mitas tires there just do a better job. They look chunkier and they feel like they're biting into the surface a little better. These are the same as the Rice Trail Rs. Very similar, slight changes in the tread pattern. They're made by the same people. So you will be able to get Rice tires for this bike. In all probability, I assume the sizes are available.
Electronics, do you want to talk about electronics and feature comforts? I really enjoy the TFT over here. It's small, easy to read. Reminds me of the BMW CE02 to a certain degree, that little small display. I really like the layout. KTM has done a fantastic job with the UX design also. Very simple. I wish it had the option of a fuel gauge.
Right.
And I think that's the only thing that's missing over here.
It is literally the only thing I miss on that bike.
There's nothing else. Whereas that leaves you wanting for a lot.
The KLX has nothing.
It's the equivalent of a Casio in terms of...
It's a simple little motorcycle. Thankfully, it does have a fuel gauge.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a gear
position indicator or anything.
It's very basic. There is one little hack on the KTM. If you flip the toggle switch up, you move to another screen that shows you your odo and your trip, which you just need to rely on the trip. You reset the trip at every fill up and you'll get a learning of how far it'll go. There's also a little low fuel warning lamp that starts to work when it hits reserve. So the moment it hits reserve, it tells you how many kilometers you've done reserve. It's a small thing, but yeah, a fuel gauge would have been nice in the KTM.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about design. I know it's a very subjective thing. The viewers can have their own opinions, but what do you think?
I like what they've done with, I like what KTM has done with the Enduro R. You know, it does look cohesive enough. But overall, I just prefer the KLX. It looks a bit more raw. It looks like a dirt bike.
Right.
I like the bright green also.
Right.
Prefer it a bit more over the orange. And just in general, from every angle that I look at it, I just really like it overall.
I completely agree with you. I think the green and orange, silver is done really very nicely. The silver finish on the frame, the engine, swing arm, really looks good. The bike looks right. It looks slim. It looks purposeful. The KTM, I am not a fan of those matte colors. I think they do the bike a little bit of injustice. The proportions are unusual. It's a very attention-grabbing bike. I was doing the fuel efficiency run and so many people are staring at it. I don't think people are used to seeing bikes that look like this. One thing I really do like on the KTM is that you can see the tip of the front high fender.
Yeah.
Whereas the KLX bends down, so you don't really see it. And that's almost like a compass point, you know, it's like it's pointing due north. And it's just a good view to have from the rider's point of view. I like that. I also like that, you know, you told me that you think it looks like a stripped down ADV, and I completely agree. But it's not just an ADV with different body panels. They've gone through the effort of making a different fuel tank. That is a big expense. Yeah. The headlamp comes off the 690 Enduro. It's a good looking headlamp. I've always dreamed of looking at big adventure bikes like Multistradas and GSs and thinking, man, that would be so cool if you take off all this unnecessary bodywork, put a single headlight on it. And effectively, KTM has done that.
True.
So, yeah, it's this naked-ish motorcycle that has the abilities of an adventure bike. And it's a funky, interesting design.
True. Also here, you don't really have an exhaust, traditionally the way you're used to seeing one. But the advantage of that being when you drop the bike, especially on the right side, you don't...
Which you did.
Yeah, which you don't end up damaging the exhaust. So.
Yeah, sure. Someone has dropped this KLX and it's damaged. And that shows no sign of damage. So the right looking thing, probably more practical if you're going to wade through rivers, which almost nobody does. Yeah. That doesn't look as good, but it's more practical, and KTM has proven that even when you go underwater with it, this has been out already, nothing seems to happen. Yeah. What about quality of parts?
Quality of parts. I mean, they both feel on par to me. I wouldn't say that feels superior in any way. I like that this has a lot more adjustability with the levers and everything, and the switchgear over here is slightly fancier.
It is.
But I wouldn't say it's far better quality in any way.
It's that typical story of these simple Japanese motorcycles have very simple looking equipment, but you get a feeling that it's solid. It's just well made. Whereas the KTM is nicer attention to detail, better finish. I mean, I don't know if it's going to last as well or not. That's something I can't say. But from a pure look and feel, the KTM is better in these aspects. Yeah. But you also did some looking into running costs.
Yes, I did.
Things like that.
Running costs. And so after I fell, I was very curious about how much it would cost to get it repaired, just in case I did manage to break something. And there's quite a surprising difference in price, especially with simple things that you generally break when you fall, like the mirrors, maybe the hand grip, the handlebar, the levers over here. We'll actually have a tab over there with all the prices to give you a reference. I can't remember them. If you look at the mirrors, they both look pretty identical, circular mirrors, but this one will cost about 900 rupees, somewhere in the ballpark, whereas that is about 2000 rupees. So I think I'd be a lot more afraid of dropping that bike, especially knowing that
far fewer Kawasaki dealerships.
Yeah, far fewer Kawasaki dealerships, and even the availability of the parts. I don't know how long I'd have to wait before I can get it. Whereas this one, I know that a lot of these parts are shared with the Adventure S and the Adventure X, so it'd be easy to swap them.
So the key difference here is that the KLX is a CKD. Yeah. It's coming in from abroad, being assembled over here, and that's why you're ending up paying more for parts. But thankfully, nothing is ridiculously, exorbitantly expensive. It's expensive, 2,000-3,000 rupees for some parts, but not wallet busting. Yeah. KTM is manufactured here. Now, the interesting thing is we know Kawasaki is working on a localized version of this bike, and that's a good thing because this is too expensive for what it is. It's 3.3 lakhs ex-showroom, which is pretty much on par with the KTM. It's 7,000 rupees difference. And as much as this is a sweet, enjoyable, adorable thing, it is very niche. The KTM is much more usable in more scenarios. So this needs to be more affordable. And I think Kawasaki will work on slashing that price down, my baby, 50 to 80,000 rupees. At which point, it's a really interesting motorcycle. But I think that brings us to our conclusion that the Kawasaki is definitely the better bike for you to buy if you have the sole intention of using this as your second or third motorcycle, ride out to an off-road location, have fun, come back, or just leave it at your farmhouse and have fun like that. It's way more affordable than any of the non-road legal imported dirt bikes that you can get, and it's genuinely fun. Yeah. But the moment you bring it on the road for any reasonable amount of time, you're in discomfort, and that's just the way of the motorcycle, right? In fact, you were telling me that overseas there's a large amount of accessories available for this bike that
yeah, there's a lot of replacement accessories. You can get a larger fuel tank, you can get much better seating, you can change a lot of parts here and there, whereas with this one you don't really have a lot yet.
It'll happen because the Enduros are going to be on sale internationally as well. But yeah, if you just want that one motorcycle to do it all, it's definitely the KTM. I found myself enjoying this bike more than the new 390 Adventures. It's light, it's nimble, it feels playful. The 9-liter fuel tank is just usable enough for the real world. I remember when I was riding my Gen 1 390 Duke years ago,
yeah.
I would get about 200 kilometers range, but much more aggressive riding. And that reminds me, that was a more aggressive bike. This does not have aggression in it.
No, it doesn't.
I am conflicted about that because on the one end, I want my KTM to be this exciting, rabid Doberman of a motorcycle that I'm constantly trying to control. And that's how it used to be with the Gen 1 390 Duke and to some extent even the Gen 3 390 Duke. This is very mellow. It's gentle at the bottom end. It comes on progressively, the power on road. And it's not this excitable thing that's constantly trying to get away from you. On the one end, I find that disappointing. On the other end, it lets me enjoy my commutes every day. I'm not feeling tired and exhausted and irritated with the bike. It lets me explore a place like this where I'm just out riding, chill, taking it all in. So there's a dual-sided nature to that. Do you find the same thing?
I do. I like, to some degree, I do like that it's a friendlier motorcycle. The engine is a bit more approachable. So newer riders who are just switching to something off-road or trying to look at something that strikes a balance between road and off-road, this seems a bit more inviting in that sense. If it had the same character,
if it had that old KTM character,
it would be a lot more intimidating.
I agree.
think. The same way, this is also quite friendly in its own way, largely because it's lower powered. So either way, I feel like in terms of approachability, both these engines to me seem approachable. In the longer run, though, I think this will remain far more exciting to me.
Yes, definitely. You'll probably grow out of the KLX.
Yeah. So all in all, I think this is a better motorcycle in the long run. If I'm just looking for a one bike, do it all.
Do it all. And I would say it's more feasible for highway riding as well. You could mount luggage in that quite easily. There's going to be space. The seat is comfortable. Not here.
Yeah.
What I would like to touch on is that I'm still not happy with that suspension. I don't have a complaint about I want more travel. That's not the case. 200 mm travel is sufficient, and the Himalayan has proved that you can do good stuff with 200 mm travel. I still think the damping on that motorcycle is a little compromised for what it needs to be. We know that this bike has been tuned for India by Bajaj. Bajaj has years and years of experience with making comfortable motorcycles for our roads. They don't have much experience with creating suspension that works well in high demand off-road riding. So fair enough. But they will thankfully be launching the 390 Enduro with the full suspension travel from International, and in that tune, I have confirmed that as well. So I'm keen to see how KTM envisage this motorcycle for international markets. Because on the one hand, I think that name is wrong.
Yeah.
I am really surprised that KTM has been willing to put the Enduro R name on a bike like this when they are a manufacturer of the most high-strung, focused motorcycles in the world for off-road riding. The fact that they agreed to put Enduro R on this, wow, that's a big marketing move.
Even the website has the international bike on there.
Yeah, it's so this is more, I would have called this the KTM 390 ADV-E maybe for Enduro
X
or
maybe.
ADV Lite or maybe ADV X if they hadn't already used that. But that's a different matter. End of the day, better all-rounder for sure. Nicer bike for off-road for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right then, work over. Let's go have some more fun. Come on, bro. Good Kawasaki. You don't want to fall down that. This is when I miss having handguards. Now what?
Straight.
You know the way, right?
Yeah.
We have no less fuel.